You guys read the title. This is going to be part 2 of my 2022 NFL draft grades, and this time we got the NFC. So before this video does get started, you guys know what to do. Hit that like button if you enjoyed, as it really does help out the channel. And also make sure to subscribe if you guys are new and you guys enjoy this type of content, so you don't miss out on any new videos like this. Plus, I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers, and once I reach my goal, I'm finally gonna do a face reveal. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get this video started. Now, starting things off, we got the Arizona Cardinals, and they traded their first round pick for Marquise Brown, and I thought that was a kind of a questionable trade, you know, to give up that much for him. And they selected Trey McBride with their very first draft pick, and that puzzled me. But I felt like their draft outside of that, I thought it was pretty good. They picked up 2 good edge rushers in Myjai Sanders and Cameron Thomas, and 2 good offensive linemen in Lexus Smith and Marquise Hayes. So I'm going to give the Arizona Cardinals a B+. After them, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I wasn't a massive fan of taking Drake London at 8 because I didn't think he was the best wide receiver in the draft. Now, that being said, it's not a god-awful pick, and they had a good draft outside of the Drake London pick. Atlanta, they addressed their horrible pass rush by taking Arnold Ebiketie and D'Angelo Malone, who I think are both pretty good prospects. They also did replace Foye Oluokun with Troy Anderson, and he was one of the best linebackers in the draft. And they also did add a really good power back to the backfield in Tyler Algier. And finally, they might have gotten their franchise quarterback in Desmond Ridder. So overall, the Atlanta Falcons, they had a pretty good draft. I'm going to give them an A-. Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers, and they had a much better draft than I thought. And I need to give credit to their front office, you know, for having a pretty good draft. They got a hometown kid and one of the best offensive linemen and players in the entire draft in Ikem Ekwonu. So great move there. They also were able to trade up, and they actually snagged maybe their potential franchise quarterback in Matt Corral. And the final day, they also did add 2 raw but potential defensive, good defensive contributors in Brandon Smith and Amari Barno. And there's a lot of boomer bust guys in this Carolina Panthers draft class. But that being said, it wasn't that bad of a draft class. I really liked it, and I'm going to give them an A-. Now, a lot of people thought that the Chicago Bears draft was awful, and I think it is an overrated draft. Their secondary, it was pretty bad, and they didn't need to improve it. So getting Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker, I didn't think that was actually a horrible move. I also do like some of their day 2 and 3 picks, like Velus Jones and Braxton Jones. I did some research on him, and he didn't seem that bad. And Dominique Robinson. Now, that being said, I'm not sure if the Bears really did enough to help Justin Fields, and I really do hope they did, because I don't really want to see Justin Fields, fail. So I'll give the Bears like a B- or like a C+. Not all. I think it is an overhated draft. However, again, I'm just not sure they did enough to help Justin Fields. After the Bears, we got the Dallas Cowboys. Now, they spent their first round pick on Tyler Smith, and I thought that was an okay pick. He's really raw, but that being said, he could be very good in the future. They also did select Sam Williams, I believe, in the 2nd round, and he's also very raw. And along with that, he has some very, 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 very bad off the field issues. But again, if they do develop him well, then he could be a very big contributor. And I also did like Jalen Tolbert and Jake Ferguson. So selecting them, both of them, I thought that was pretty good. And getting Damone Clark in the 5th round, I also thought that was a great move. He has the potential to be one of the best linebackers in this entire draft. I'm going to give the Dallas Cowboys a B. Next up, we have the Detroit Lions, and their first round was phenomenal, to say the least. With their own first round pick at number 2, they did select Aiden Hutchinson, and I thought that was a good pick. And then they traded up, with the Minnesota Vikings to get Jameson Williams, and that was also another phenomenal pick. Their wide receiving core, it's looking pretty good now. Later on, they would select Josh Pascal, who I also thought was pretty decent as well. And if they can develop him, I mean, he can be Aiden Hutchinson's partner in crime. They also did get Kirby Joseph, and he was one of the best safeties in this draft, and he's very good. He's a very good coverage safety, and he should help out their secondary. They also did pick up Malcolm Rodriguez, who, I mean, that was a solid pick, despite the fact that he is kind of undersized. And overall, I really did like this draft a lot. I think the Lions have a very bright future. I'm going to give the Detroit Lions an A. After the Lions, we got the Green Bay Packers. Now, the Quay Walker pick, it was awful and one of the worst draft picks the entire, 2022 draft. Now, that being said, I did like the Devonta Wyatt selection. I thought that was good. And their draft after their first round, I thought it was much better. Christian Watson, yes, he's very raw, but that being said, he was one of the better wide receivers in the draft. And again, if he's developed right, he can be very, very good. They also did get Sean Ryan, and I mean, he can help improve that offensive line. And they after them, they did select Romeo Doubs, who I think can be a pretty good deep threat. They also did get Kingsley Enagbare, who can, add depth to their defensive line. And they got Zach Tom in the 5th round, and in my opinion, that was a massive ass steal. I was a big fan of Zach Tom, heading into the draft. So I'm going to give the Green Bay Packers a B+. Following the Green Bay Packers, we got the Los Angeles Rams. Now the Rams, I mean, as expected, they didn't really have many draft picks, on the first 2 days. They mostly had day 3 draft picks. Logan Bass, I mean, I didn't know too much about him, but then I did some research, and I think he can be a pretty good offensive lineman. They also did get Kyron Williams, who can be, I think, a good third down back for them. And then they selected Quentin Lake, and I thought that was not that bad of a day 3 pickup, and same thing with De'Arion Kendrick. Overall, it was an okay draft, but at the same time, it's nothing crazy, so I'll give them like I'll say a C+. After them, we have the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Vikings, they traded back a lot in the draft, and they ended up, they landed Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth, and I liked both of those picks. I think they can really help out this secondary, and their secondary, it was awful. So, very good, by the Minnesota Vikings. They also did address their offensive line by drafting Ed Ingram, who, yes, he needs to work on his pass protection, but he is pretty good as a run blocker. And along with that, the Vikings did address their defense more by picking Brian Asamoah and Caleb Evans. Overall, I thought the Vikings did have a pretty good draft, and I'm going to give them a B+. The New Orleans Saints' first 2 picks were great. They selected Chris Olave, and they selected Trevor Penning in the first round. However, I did not like the Alontae Taylor pick in the 2nd round. And I won't lie, their draft outside of those, for 2 first-round picks, it wasn't anything crazy. However, that being said, I like those 2 first-round picks so much to the point where I'll give the Saints a B. It wasn't a horrible draft. I love the Giants' first 2 picks. They had 2 top 10 picks, and they landed Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal. And I mean, that was the best, first-round scenario for them. So honestly, massive ass W for the Giants, for getting those 2 guys. However, I will say I did not like the Wan'Dale Robinson pick. I thought it was a reach. And I will say, I mean, I'm guessing that, one of Kadarius Toney, Darius Slayton, or Sterling Shepard will be gone, because they picked Wan'Dale Robinson. They also did add another, pretty decent offensive lineman in Josh Azudu. And they did take a chance on Cordell Flott, which wasn't a phenomenal pick. And they picked up tight end Daniel Bellinger, who honestly, I mean, he actually is not that bad. And they addressed their defense even more by picking up Dane Belton and Darian Beavers. Overall, I thought the draft was, it was good. It was mostly those 2 first-round picks, but overall, the Giants, they had a decent draft. I'm going to give them a B+. The Eagles had 2 first-round picks heading into the draft. However, on day 1 of the draft, they actually traded one of their first-round picks for A.J. Brown, and that is a W bigger than Jordan Davis. And speaking of Jordan Davis, Yeah, they used their first round pick on Jordan Davis. And Jordan Davis, I mean, I thought it was a good pick. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who, thought he was overrated, but I thought he was good. He can be a good successor to Fletcher Cox. And Javon Hargrave, yes, he's very good, but also, he is also, he's somewhat old. He is getting a little bit up there in age. But yeah, Jordan Davis, he has insane upside. So if the coaching staff can, teach this guy some pass rush moves, he'll be a monster in the NFL. Aside from that, they also did pick up Cam Jurgens and Nakobe Dean. And speaking of Nakobe Dean, he might have been the biggest steal in the entire draft. I mean, I can kind of understand why he fell so much, but still, that was a massive steal. I really like the draft for Philadelphia and the A.J. Brown trade, so I'm going to give them an A. Following the Eagles, we got the San Francisco 49ers. Now, San Francisco had no first round pick this year, so they made their first selection in the second round, and they would take Drake Jackson. And honestly, I thought that wasn't a bad pick at all. Drake Jackson, yes, he is kind of raw, but that being said, with these raw players, I mean, if you can coach them up well, I mean, I do think they can be valuable contributors. However, that being said, I did not like the Tyrion Davis-Price pick at all. I mean, I thought that was horrible, man. I know San Francisco loves to recycle their running backs, and I know they love to just get a new running back every year, but still, I just did not like that pick. After that, all their selections, they were okay, so I thought it wasn't a phenomenal draft. It was fine. I'll give them a C+. Following them, we have their division rival in the Seattle Seahawks, and let me just say, I am a massive fan of the Seahawks draft. They addressed the offensive line by getting Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas, and I do believe Abe Lucas was one of the most underrated offensive linemen in this whole draft. And Charles Cross, he was one of the best offensive linemen in the entire draft. So great job by the Seahawks for getting those two guys. Not to mention, they did address the pass rush by getting Boye Mafe. And yes, again, with these raw players, yes, he's very raw, but he has a lot of potential. And I do believe that if coached up properly, Boye Mafe can be one of the best edge rushers in this entire class. They also did get Kobe Bryant, who I think is a pretty solid cornerback, not the basketball player, obviously, and Tariq Woolen, who, like Boye Mafe, he's very raw, but that being said, he has a lot of potential, and he can help this defense improve. Now, the Kenneth Walker pick in round 2, I thought that was somewhat confusing because running back wasn't a massive need, but I guess they're moving on from Chris Carson. And Ken, he was arguably the best running back in the entire draft, and him and Rashad Penny will form one of the best running back duos in the entire NFL. And then Bo Melton in the 7th round, I believe. I mean, I thought that was a really good pick. He was one of the most underrated receivers in this entire draft. The Seattle Seahawks, I'm giving them an A. The Buccaneers will be the second last team I will be going over. Now, they used their first draft pick on Logan Hall, and I thought that was a decent pick. They also did address their offensive line as well by taking Luke Gadecki. I was a massive fan of their Cade Otton, Rachaad White, and Zion McCollum picks. And as Cade Otton, he's a great all-around tight end who can be their tight end of the future. Rachaad White was one of the best running backs in this entire draft. I was a massive fan of him, and I think he should be a really good backup behind Leonard Fournette. They also got Zion McCollum as well, as I said before. And Zion McCollum, he's raw, but you guys know the line, he has a lot of potential, and if coached up right, he can be a very good player down the line. I'll give the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a B+. And to wrap this video up, we have the Washington Commanders. Now, Jahan Dotson I thought was an okay pick. It was a slight reach, however, at the same time, wasn't horrible. I thought it was decent. Now, I did not like the Fedarian Mathis pick in the 2nd round because their defensive line, it's fine. I mean, I understand that Daron Payne is, likely out the door, and maybe they just wanted to keep that defensive line as really scary, so they selected Fedarian Mathis, but still, I'm not a big fan of it. They got Brian Robinson, and I thought that wasn't a bad pick at all. He does add depth to that backfield, and I thought he was a pretty good running back in the draft. And I am surprised at how much Sam Howell fell. And I think getting Sam Howell in the 5th was actually not that bad. Because if you don't believe Carson Wentz can be your long-term guy, I think Sam Howell can, you know. And Carson Wentz, he's likely going to be playing this year. So that can give Sam Howell time to, learn the playbook and, just improve on things he has to improve on. So overall, I thought the Commanders had an okay draft. I'll give them a B. But that'll do it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. It really means a lot to me. Again, like, subscribe, do all that stuff, and also check me out on social media. The links to my social medias, they are in the description below. But without further ado, I'm out, you guys.